Imagine a world in which almost all your food, clothing, toys, tools, and furniture were grown or made by your own family or a nearby craftsman. Most of your day would be spent working. Because handmade goods were costly and took so much time to make, you'd have only a few clothes and toys. This was the reality of life for all but the wealthiest for hundreds of years before the Industrial Revolution. From the late 1700s to the mid 1800s, new inventions made it possible for clothing, furniture, and other items to be made quickly and cheaply in factories. Steam engines, along with railways, canals, and better roads, simplified shipping these products. Life was easier in many ways, but these conveniences came with a price. Let's look at a map of America in 1800s. Let's wonder, what was life in America like? Let's think about how the products and resources may have affected the availability of jobs and the daily life of those living in different regions. As we just learned, life was hard. Life was filled with so much work. And when we look at this map, we can see all along the coast of the United States, the east coast of the United States, so much of the work was farming. If we look down south, we can see cotton. All along the coast, we can see cornfields, wheat fields, cattle. Up here in New England and Massachusetts, we see the first textile mill opens. Textiles are fabrics. When we think about what the resources were along the east coast of the United States at this time, we can imagine what the daily lives of people were like. Think about this for a minute. Imagine your family lived along the East Coast. Pick some place along here and think to yourself, what would my life have been like if I was living there at this time? What would I have done all day? What would my work have been like? The first factory in America. Samuel Slater worked in a textile, cloth or woven fabric, mill in England as a boy. In 1789, he immigrated to the United States and brought with him secret details about England's innovative, creative machinery, which he had memorized. Rhode Island Mill. Slater built America's first water-powered cotton spinning mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. By the end of 1790, it was up and running, with workers walking a treadmill to generate power. By 1791, a water wheel drove the machinery that carded or combed cotton and spun it into thread. America's Industrial Revolution. Slater employed families, including children, to live and work at the mill site. He quickly attracted workers. In 1803, Slater and his brother built a mill village they called Slatersville, also in Rhode Island. It was soon imitated and improved upon throughout New England. While the Industrial Revolution brought many conveniences to the people of the United States, it didn't come without a price. Let's think about Slater's Mill. How did this event affect America in the 1830s? Think about the people, places, and resources when answering the question. Samuel Slater brought over the design for the first American textile mill from England. Others began to open up mills and factories like his in the northern states by the 1830s. More and more people worked in these mills, including entire families with children. He created a place called Slatersville, a town built around the mill. America was no longer a bunch of farms all over the country. There were more people working away from farms and in factories. More cotton in the South was probably being grown to provide material for the northern mills and factories. Do you think this event was helpful or harmful for a young nation? Explain why, using evidence from the documents and map. I believe the opening of the first mill was helpful for the nation because it allowed more people to work. The mills also brought more money, most likely helping the young economy. The products created in the mills could provide more goods for Americans and/or be exported to Europe for money. Lowell's Mill. During the 1800s, Lowell, Massachusetts quickly transformed itself from a farm town to a busy industrial city. Women, immigrant families, and European tourists all flocked to Lowell to work at one of the many textile mills or to visit the industrious, busy or productive, city that was becoming a popular tourist destination. Over 6 miles of canals powered the water wheels of Lowell's mills, whose massive 6-story brick buildings took over the city's landscape. The city's female workforce was significant in the history of Lowell. From the early to mid-1800s, women gave up the farming lifestyle of small rural towns and areas to live more independent lives in industrial cities. Most were young girls, usually 13 to 18 years old, who were tired of the limited opportunities offered by their domestic work on farms or in small towns. The mill boarding house keepers constantly supervised the girls' social activities, for which they hardly had any time, considering their daily 12 to 14-hour work schedules. The girls were expected to follow the strict code of conduct, respecting curfew, assigned time to be home, and attending church. Let's listen to a letter that was written from Mary S. Paul to her father. Mary was a worker in Lowell Mill, and this is her experience. Let's think, what ways did she benefit from working in the factory, and what ways may she not have benefited from working in the factory? 21 December 1845. Dear Father, I received your letter on Thursday the 14th with much pleasure. My life and health are spared, while others are cut off. Last Thursday, one girl fell down and broke her neck, which caused instant death. She was going in or coming out of the mill and fell down, it being very icy. Last Tuesday, we were paid. In all, I had $6.60 and paid $4.68 for board. With the rest, I got me a pair of rubbers and a pair of 50-cent shoes. At 6:30, the bell rings for the girls to get up, and at 7, they are called to the mill. At 12:30, we have dinner, are called back again at 1, and stay till 7:30. I get along very well with my work. If any girls want employment, I advise them to come to Lowell. After learning about Lowell's Mill and hearing Mary's experience, let's think a bit. How did Lowell's Mill affect the lives of Americans in the 1800s? Think about people, places, and resources when answering this question. Do you think Lowell's Mill was helpful or hurtful to the development of America and its people? Think about Mary's letter. Think about her experience. Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin. The first cotton gin, 1794. The cotton gin was created by an American inventor, Eli Whitney, in 1794. Until then, cotton had been picked using simple handheld roller gins, machines for separating cotton from its seeds, that required a great deal of effort and time. Whitney's cotton gin revolutionized the cotton industry by making the process of separating cotton seeds from the soft fiber much easier and faster. As a result, cotton farmers were able to produce more cotton, which earned them much greater profits. Cotton production created fortunes for many Southern plantation owners. However, one of the effects of this huge growth in the cotton industry was that slavery became even stronger in the South than it had been before. The growing profitability of cotton actually increased the demand for slave labor, which is not likely something Whitney ever foresaw. The passage we just read gave us some pretty clear ideas about ways that Eli Whitney's cotton gin improved the lives of Americans, but didn't improve the lives of all Americans. Let's think about these two questions. How did Eli Whitney's cotton gin affect the lives of Americans when it was invented in the 1790s? Think about people, places, and resources when answering this question. And do you think the cotton gin was helpful or hurtful to the development of America and its people? When answering this question, there were things that were positive about it, but of course it came at a great cost to many people. Robert Fulton invented the steamboat. Robert Fulton invented the steamboat in 1803. In the 1790s, a wealthy judge in New York named Robert R. Livingston wanted to find a faster way to travel between Manhattan and his country estate, 110 miles up the Hudson River. At that time, transportation on the river was limited to sailboats. Livingston dreamed of inventing a boat powered by steam. Unfortunately, he wasn't much of an inventor, and all his steamboat attempts failed. A few years later, President Jefferson sent Livingston to France. While there, Livingston met Robert Fulton, a talented engineer, and hired him to invent a steamboat. Fulton's first experimental steamboat sailed down the Seine River in France in 1803. After this success, Livingston and Fulton started to construct a steamboat in New York. In 1807, Fulton's steamboat was completed. Crowds cheered as his ship hissed its way up the Hudson, traveling at an average speed of 4.5 miles per hour. Within a year, the newly established Fulton-Livingston line conveyed hundreds of passengers and tons of freight between New York City and Albany. The success of the Hudson River steamboats led to the use of steam engine in newer steamship models, as well as in mills, factories, and trains. Steam-powered transportation secured the American economy's stability and influenced everyday life for over a century. Robert Fulton Steamboat. How did Robert Fulton Steamboat affect the lives of Americans when it was invented in the early 1800s? Do you think the steamboat was helpful or hurtful to the development of America and its people? Don't forget when answering this question that you want to think about not just the steamboat and the invention of the steamboat, but you also want to think about how the invention of the steamboat affected other kinds of transportation and also the use of steam in factories. As we can see from the passages we just read, the Industrial Revolution and its inventions made the life in America great for so many people. It moved us forward as a country in many ways, but it did come with a price. As you're reading and thinking today, make sure you remember to consider both sides of the Industrial Revolution, all the great that it did, but some of the things that happened to many of the people who lived in this country at this time. who did